many things have to occur before that's consummated, and we've gone through about half of those, and we haven't discovered any problems yet. We've done some environmental and soils analyses of the property. Those reports have come back very good. Before we decided to encumber that property, we tried to do a bit of research. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know your neighborhood as well as you do, because I don't. I don't think anyone at DESC does. And we want to listen to you about what your concerns are. If I were a betting man, I would say this project is probably going to go forward. And what I would like to see is how can we work together to make sure that it works for the neighborhood as much as it works for DESC. We try to be good neighbors in neighborhoods that we have existing properties in. We will provide you with names of neighborhood community leaders in neighborhoods where we have project located and contact information, and let you talk to them directly to find out, as a neighbor, what it's like having a project, a DESC project in their neighborhoods. In all of our housing projects, we require that the project manager join the relevant neighborhood organizations and become active members. Ultimately, our desire is to have residents become actively involved in neighborhood issues. We don't expect that immediately, because these are folks coping with difficult problems in their lives. But some percentage, as there was a photo board, maybe, oh, it's back there. You can see some of the residents, the Morrison Hotel, joining with the Pioneer Square Community Association and a couple of beautification efforts, planting flowers in public flower spaces, going on graffiti paint outs. Those residents have been there a long time, and those are people that have stabilized their conditions. One of the things that I would like for you to bear in mind when you're living with psychiatric issues, and the overwhelming majority of people that would be targeted for this building are living with psychiatric issues, if not 100%. The biggest behavioral problem that we have with our residents is their tendency to isolate in their own rooms. And so much of our work is trying to help them break out of that social isolation and engage with us and other members of the community in their building initially, and hopefully, ultimately, with everybody else in the neighborhood. And we have a couple of things that we incorporate into our lease that you or I wouldn't want if we were renting a market rate apartment. The first one is a good neighbor commitment that obligates residents to treat the neighborhood in a respectful fashion and proscribes behaviors like panhandling, drug-related activity, other kinds of antisocial, uncivil behaviors in the immediate neighborhood. The other policy that we have is a visitation policy. Residents of our buildings have rights, but visitors don't. And we tightly regulate who comes into our building, and coming into the building is a privilege that can be withdrawn at any time and is withdrawn if a resident is exhibiting inappropriate behavior either inside the building or in the neighborhood. One of the things that we will do is make known a phone number that is good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you see something in the neighborhood that disturbs you and you think it's associated with our project, you can call that phone number and we will come to you. And if it is a DESC Delridge project resident, we will take the person back, and depending on the seriousness of the behavior that caused the concern, there will be a consequence for that person and the housing project. That could include eviction. What we find, we have this in all of our projects, what we find about 80% of the calls that we receive don't concern our residents at all, but some other homeless person. We will still stay with a concerned citizen nonetheless and problem solve with them about who should be called. Should we call 911 or should we call the police directly? If it's a psychiatric crisis, should we call the DMHPs for an assessment of a person for a possible involuntary
commitment? What DMHP? Because these acronyms might be going by my head.
I'm sorry. Designated mental health professionals. Those are county employees that are statutorily authorized to detain a person involuntarily when they're in a certain type of psychiatric crisis that meets legislatively defined criteria. Basically, a threat to self, threat to others, are gravely disabled, meaning they're so disoriented they can't take care of life-sustaining activity. Those are the people that have the power to officially detain someone, remand them to the psychiatric unit at Harborview against their will, and compel medications for 72 hours before they come before a judge. We're tightly connected with those systems, and we can be useful in that regard. And just because it's not a Rainier House resident, that doesn't mean that we won't stay there with you and try to think through an appropriate disposition for that immediate problem. There's a goo gob of other things I could say about DESC, but I'm sure you guys came with questions. I've been reading the West Seattle blog and the 60-odd comments that have been posted there. And I guess the first thing I would like to say, I think I've already said it to Carrie, I'd like to compliment you, both opponents as well as supporters, in the thoughtfulness of your reaction to TR's initial posting of this article. I respect your positions. I don't always agree with those of you that are opposing them, and I'm sure that's predictable to you. But it's clear you guys are thinkers, and I appreciate that. We value that. So let me hush and throw it open for Q&A.